3, 2, 1. Welcome to another Britflix.com podcast. My name is Stuart Wright, and today's returning guest is David Nicholas Wilkinson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back again.
It's all right. Well, I was just looking through our records, and I know we talked about this in the locker room, but I'm going to say it for the listener. You first appeared. You previously appeared 2023 talking about your epic documentary "Getting Away with Murders," which asked why 90% of those who carried out the murders in the Holocaust were never prosecuted. You came on for postcards from the 48% back in 2000. When was that? 2018.
2018. Yeah,
a film you made basically to tell the rest of Europe we're not all lunatics. When we do come back, there is a large rump of us who understand what it means to be a European.
Yes.
And I was pretty sure, and you've confirmed it, that in 2015 we did indeed discuss your film, the first film, which was your 33-year-long quest to prove the world's first film industry started in Leeds and not in France. But I can't find it in my archive, so I'm going to make that my little mission over the next couple of weeks.
It's the French. They've intercepted it.
Do you reckon that's what it is?
Yes.
They don't want to know. And today
it's all a conspiracy.
Indeed. Well, we'll feed that conspiracy machine because I think there's going to be enough in terms of your new film, The Marbles. So do you want to give us a brief synopsis to what The Marbles is about?
So The Marbles, again, it's another film that's taken me a long time to get to the screen.
Yeah.
And it's very simply it's my putting forward why I think the Parthenon marbles should be returned to Greece. And they have been sitting in the British Museum for over 200 years. And as I will prove in the film, they were stolen. And we have been perpetually kind of living this lie that we own them. This is sort of extraordinary thing of British Empire. And it's rather sad that we hang on to the good things of our past, but we also hang on to all the sorts of really awful things that were done in the name of the country in which we live in. And I'm, for one, think that it's high time that we sort of made amends for the wrongdoings. And one of those wrongdoings, people said to me, why are you following such an important film as Getting Away with Murders with something that's so kind of lightweight? And I don't think that at all, because, Greece is our friend. And for the Greeks, the Parthenon sculptures and friezes, the marbles as they're collectively known, are their soul, they're their birthright. It's so incredibly important to them. And for us, it means very little. Most people I know have never even been to see them. And I just think that it's an extraordinary gesture if we were to make that to a friendly country. And in this day and age, we need all our friends.
Indeed.
That this would just be marvellous. It would be very much of the 21st century, not, as Brian Cox says in my film, living back in the 17th century. And there's an awful lot of that going on at the moment in this country, of living in the past. And, for me, the British Museum should be full of British things.
Yes.
I mean, we have the most extraordinary, wonderful, diverse culture. But for some reason, the museum is stuffed to the gills with things taken from other countries. Some of them legitimately taken, but others just stolen, basically. So that's the whole premise of the film.
Okay.
And I have to put forward the case as to why this needs to be done. So I kind of dissect the whole thing. And at the same time, I also look at what other countries have done, particularly Scotland. Scotland, as I hope I prove in the film, is not only ahead of other countries like France and Germany that think they're, and the Netherlands, particularly the Netherlands, that think they're ahead of the game in returning dubiously acquired artifacts.
Yeah.
But Scotland has been doing it since 1947. So you've got this extraordinary thing that within the four nations that make up the United Kingdom, one of them is doing something so very different from one of the other ones. And again, as Brian Cox said, Lord Elgin, who stole them, was Scottish. And Brian says in the film, if Lord Elgin had put the Parthenon marbles in a museum in Scotland, they would have gone back years ago. And Scotland has continually been returning things, and so much so that a lot of British museums, English museums, or British museum, they've been following their examples. So one of the great heroes within England is the Manchester Museum, which has done enormous things in righting great wrongs and returning particularly human remains, which was stolen, was stored there. And so what is beginning to look like is that you've got all these other museums coming together, doing the right thing. And the British Museum, which should be ahead of all of this and leading it, they still have the Parthenon marbles. And the problem is because there is something called the 1963 British Museums Act, which actually prevents the British Museum from returning major collections. So it is down to government to actually decide whether they're going to change the law or not.
Jesus.
And no government, particularly if they were conservative, has ever agreed to that. Strangely enough, Michael Foot, Neil Kinnock, and Jeremy Corbyn, when they were leaders of the opposition, they all went on record saying that if they ever became prime minister, they would ensure that they were returned. Wow. And unfortunately, the Labour prime minister who got in was Tony Blair, and he didn't follow through on this at all.
Well, we're recording this on the 22nd of October, and in 2 weeks' time, you've got your world premiere, after which the film is planned to be in various cinemas in the UK right through to the end of the year. So I will put links in the show notes so people can track where it is. So hopefully they can find somewhere local to them to see it in cinemas. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
So, and then it'll go online somewhere.
Cool. Well, we'll update the show notes as and when. So, like your first film one, then what in terms of it being a long time in you sort of bringing this to fruition, as it were, is it a project that had sort of hung around and you thought about doing, or is it a project that's took a long time to do?
It's an interesting thing when you have ideas, and I'm never going to be supported by any establishment, particularly now with my age. And so I know that whatever I decide to do has got to be something I'm passionate about and have an interest. What I don't want to do is start something and not finish it. So I thought about doing this in 2008.
Yeah.
And I went to the sort of normal sources and they turned me down. And I sort of kept it on the back burner. And every now and again, if I met someone with money or whatever, I would bring it up and nobody be interested. But I decided to start making it in 2020 when somebody gave me £10,000.
Okay.
So that got started because I knew I'd have to use really my wife's money to sort of finish it, but I never like to start it too much with my money. I like to know there's other people giving me money. And I was asked to do a budget by somebody. He said, do me the proper budget of what it would cost. This is an Australian Greek man. He said, I'll have no problem raising you the money.
Okay.
So I did a budget, and it was £550,000. And that was me, which is actually half the price, less than half of a documentary I made called How to Change the World, which I was one of 17 executive producers, and I only ever took £10,000 from that. And that was only made in 2 countries. But my original concept was to film in, obviously, the UK, in Greece, in France, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in China, in America, and a few other countries. And so I had to cost all of that. After about a year, it became apparent I wasn't even going to get anywhere near the the Greek person had grossly overestimated what he thought Greek people. I mean, we went to literally thousands of, wealthy and well-off Greeks, and we just didn't get very much money at all. I think in the end, he got me £14,000 from a cousin of his and another 10,000 somewhere, and I kept raising bits of money. So I had to readapt the whole thing about, okay, I'm probably never going to go to most of these places. How can I restructure it? So I find that fascinating. My original film I'd have made it in the bulk of it in 2021, and I would have released it in 2022. And yes, I'd have got paid for it, and everybody else would have done, but it wouldn't be anywhere near as strong as it is now, because by the most extraordinary coincidence, because I was filming for 5 years, lots of different things happened as I was going along. For instance, vast numbers of items, over 2,000 items, it is alleged, in the British Museum was stolen by people who work for the British Museum.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it only got found out because this guy was selling them over eBay. And somebody in the Netherlands who's in the museums world got wind of this and tracked it down. I mean, it was grossly embarrassing for the British Museum. So I was able to incorporate that. So that was to my advantage. So in the end, I made the film for a fraction of what I wanted to do, but I think it's actually worked out as a better film. And I think with all my films, I've never had anywhere near the budget I wanted, but it causes you to laterally think. You go, so the normal way, if you get like on How to Change the World, which is directed by Jerry Rothwell. So we had a £1.27 million budget.
Wow.
So Jerry films it all up front and then he edits it.
Yeah.
Now, I can't do that. So I film, run out of money, do a little bit of editing, get someone in, and then start filming again and then do. So it just adds to it. And I love that sort of filming, editing, waiting, filming, editing, waiting. And I think it improves and helps things creatively. If it wasn't for the fact I'm the age I am, and I grew up in a time of cheap housing, I wouldn't be able to afford to do that. So, we paid our mortgage off a long time ago. Our children have left home and my wife is doing very well. So I'm subsidized, but I really despair for young people. I mean, I meet them all at, Sheffield Dockfest, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s. I thought, how are they going to be able to do independent films with an independent voice? Because what's happening now is that they're going to have to be funded by some source, and it's very hard to do something if it's a political film, because nobody wants to get involved in anything. The days, as we're going to talk about, I grew up in this extraordinary time when ITV made very hard-hitting documentaries, and they went out at prime time, and 5, 6, 8 million people would watch them, and there is no way any of these would be made
people like John
now.
Pilger would be making films, wouldn't he, for television, like really challenging the status quo on your own public service broadcast. With your documentary, then, what do you feel? You obviously you've had that first initial idea to do it in 2008, then it actually gets going for real for you as to what we see now in 2020. So in that time where you've been pulling together, you obviously had an idea and a perception as to what this was going to be about the marbles. What's the most significant change in your kind of opinion about what you've done, or what's the biggest supporting point that you've found about what you believe about the marbles going back to Greece that you've discovered through making the movie that you couldn't have known without making the movie?
It's Scotland, because I had not. So most of my filming was going to be in other countries,
right?
And looking at what other countries have done and their history and talking to them about. And bizarrely, it has become about another country. If you think of, as I do, the UK as being 4 separate countries.
Yeah.
But Scotland was never going to come into my original concept. And so I probably would have not dismissed it. And it was only when I started thinking, well, how can I film here? Because obviously, filming in the UK, you don't have flights and you don't have all that entails. Although going to Scotland, obviously, you've got to travel there and you've got to have overnights. And I first hit upon the Ghost Dance shirt, which it was something that happened in the 1990s, where a lawyer representing the Lakota, quite by chance, went to a museum in Glasgow and discovered a shirt that Buffalo Bill had brought over and sold to, or somebody that worked for Buffalo Bill had sold to the museum. And it was taken off the dead body of somebody massacred at Wounded Knee.
Bloody hell.
And so I went to film that, but then that opened up all the other things that Scotland were doing. So I'm really pleased by that, because I think I have discovered, because I pulled all the threads together, and I say in the film that Scotland is the number one world leader when it comes to the repatriation of dubious artifacts, but nobody'd ever really joined that up before.
Yeah.
So I was very pleased by that.
I don't see, as decades and centuries later, what the big headache is about returning something to its rightful place. So what's at the nub of the resist? I mean, you've got the Acts of Parliament, which sort of makes it a political decision, but it's not morally ambiguous, is it? That you've stolen something and don't return it.
But it's something like, the Scots are much more open-minded to giving things back if they belong to someone else. It's within their DNA. And there's something about we English, certain parts of the English, where we keep it. We keep it. It's like I have 25 pairs of shoes, and I bought another pair recently, and I thought, this is insane. I can never wear all these shoes. And it's the greed. It's the kind of avarice of wanting more and more and more. I've got to have this. And it's because we have it. It's the old finders keepers. We have it, so we'll keep it.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible thing in human nature. And I can't really explain it. It's why people, I've met many incredibly wealthy people when I've tried to search for money. And the surprise, this is a very, very good example, is I went to meet a Greek man who took me for lunch with his advisor, and he was very interested in it. And he'd obviously not read my proposal, because I'd said I was looking for donations, not investment, because this will never make its money back. And he told me about how he's got a very large house in London, which he said is probably worth about £35 million.
That is a large house.
And he showed me pictures of his estate in the countryside, and his flat in Athens, and his enormous villa on an island in Greece. And he told me that he pays himself a basic £5 million a year, and he gets bonuses on what he does. And he can never spend all the money in his lifetime. And when he found out that it wasn't an investment and that there was no way he could get a tax break, he said, well, I love what you're doing. He said, but I can't give you any money. And I said, not even £1,000. He said, no. He said, I'm a businessman. I'm in it there's got to be a monetary reward for me.
Jeez.
And me giving you a donation, yes, I think the Parthenon marble should go back. And I just couldn't reason with him. Anyway, he paid the bill for me and the advisor and himself, and it came to just under £500. I mean, they'd had champagne, I didn't. I mean, it was in one of the most expensive restaurants in London, and the food was magnificent. But it was like, you spend all that money on this. And I'm using a Greek person, but that's the sort of mentality that we've got into, is that we've got it, I'm not letting anybody else have it.
I mean,
and that's all I can think it is at the end of the day.
But you can see when countries are fighting over land, as in like somebody, as we see in Ukraine, like Russia is in Ukraine. That's a physical act of taking something away and not budging, and that's what people will fight. People will get angry and fight over that. But the idea of any face that you'll lose by returning an artifact, it's like what is it? What does it? What diplomatically and politically, it doesn't look bad. I mean, I'm struggling really.
It's not the face of it; it's the fact that we should have them. And for years,
so it's a sense of entitlement. So it's like a sense of entitlement more than anything else.
Oh, it's entitlement. It's totally and it's English entitlement.
Okay,
but so the British Museum for years, and we're talking about many decades, said that they're better off in London because more people come to London. Well, you can't really say that in 2025. But then they used to say, but the British Museum is wonderful. The Greeks don't have somewhere to display them. Well, the Greeks have built the Acropolis Museum, which is much more suitable than the British Museum. I mean, the British Museum, where they hold the Parthenon marbles, the roof was leaking a few years ago. So there's lots of problems with the British Museum because it's an old building. And so every time they try to come up with something, as time goes on, that kind of argument evaporates. And now it really just comes down to the fact that we've got them.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to see it. It sounds fascinating because, like I say, fundamentally, I can't get my head around it. But obviously, you've seen the rationale at play, as it were, and but also found the good examples in Scotland where how it can be done, so to speak. So the Marbles will be in cinemas till the end of 2025 at the very least, and then on digital streaming at some point in the 2026. So let us now move on to 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Are you ready for this?
I am.
Good man. Good man. Right then. For those that don't know it and are listening to this for the first time, the rules are simple. David has given me 3 film titles. And every time we hear this sound, you can hear that at your end, okay, David?
Yes.
Every time we hear that sound, that'll mean that 5 minutes are up and we stop talking about that film and we move on to the next one. Does that sound like what you've signed up for?
Absolutely.
Superb. Right then. First out the gate is 1963's Billy Liar, starring Tom Courtenay and Julie Christie in the movie that made her a movie star. Directed by John Schlesinger, and is the story of a lazy, irresponsible young clerk in a provincial northern town who lives in his own fantasy world and makes emotionally immature decisions as he alienates friends and family. A fun fact, given where your origins are, the railway station was supposed to be Bradford, but is actually Marylebone Station in London.
Yeah.
So
they like with all films, they had budgetary problems.
So then, tell us.
It's easier to film in Marylebone because you don't have to pay for overnights, and so that's what happened.
So tell us, why is this film so memorable for you, and why does it have such an impact on you?
It's extraordinary because it grew on me over time. So I never saw it in the cinema, and I don't know when I first saw it on television.
Okay,
and it's something that I think I first really became aware of it when I worked with Wilfred Pickles in a big, very serious ITV drama series called The Nearly Man. And Wilfred was towards the end of his career. And I think in those days, there was obviously no video, no DVD. So you would have to wait for things to be on television. But I know I did talk to him about it. He plays the father in it, Tom Courtenay's father. And over time, I've realised that it's actually my favourite British film. I mean, I hate it when people say, what are your top 10 films? Because I can never decide. But Billy Liar has now got to be one of them. And the reason it resonates with me is throughout the film. So Billy lives this kind of in this fantasy world called Ambrosia. And it's originally based on a book which was then a stage play, originally created by the part of Billy Liar, if you like. It was played by Albert Finney. And Tom Courtenay was either the second or third, and I think he might have even understudied Albert Finney. I can't quite remember now. And Albert Finney, I don't know whether John Schlesinger wanted Albert or not.
He did,
right.
Yeah.
And so he lives in this fantasy world, and I lived in a fantasy world, as I think all children do when you're young.
Yes.
And the extraordinary thing is, when I was 13, I thought it would be wonderful if I'd become an actor. I don't know why. I joined the local Yeadon Amateur Operatic and Dramatic Society. And by the most extraordinary twist of fate, I became a professional actor at 14, playing the title role in The Winslow Boy, where I had to have elocution lessons. I was one of they looked at over 2,000 boys, and they only chose 3 of us in the end because there were licensing laws and we had to take it in turns. So I got to go to that there London, which Billy Liar is always talking about leaving. And in the film, he always he talks about script writing for Danny Boone. And, but there's a spoiler alert for those that haven't seen it, but it never happens. He has this chance of going off with Liz, played by Julie Christie. Now, over the years, because I became, I suppose, obsessed by this, I've got to know Tom Courtenay, who's in the first film. Obviously, Wilfred Pickles I'd worked with. I got to know the writer, Keith Waterhouse, very well. I actually talked to Keith about doing a sequel for it, which he liked my idea for it, but him and John Schlesinger didn't want to do it. And then John Schlesinger became a friend. My wife worked with him on 5 different projects. Blimey. And Julie Christie, he never wanted at all. He originally cast a woman called Topsy Jane, who'd been in a previous film with Tom Courtenay called Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. And they shot some footage with Topsy Jane, which is still in the film. You can just see it.
Oh, there's our alarm. So do you want to finish your thought?
Yes. So, gosh, I had 10 minutes, 5 minutes really went very quickly there. But yes, so it's become this film that I became Billy Liar without knowing it. And I've always, all my life, wondered what I would have been if I'd not made that move.
Yeah.
If I'd stayed there like Billy.
I tell you what, the magnificence of Billy Liar for me is no matter how many times I watch it, I still don't believe that he won't get on the train. I still believe he'll get on.
Well, that was John's problem, because he said Julie Christie is somebody that everybody would get on the train with. That's why he felt Topsy Jane was better, because she was quite plain.
Well, do you know, the interesting thing about that is in that casting choice and the indecision there is that Julie Christie spent most of the shoot worrying whether she'd been miscast. Which is kind of, we're all crazy in the end, aren't we? And we don't, and none of us know anything, as the old phrase goes. Right, sir. On to your second choice, which has opened my eyes to something that I didn't even know existed. So I'm all ears. So 1975's Johnny Go Home, directed by John Willis for ITV, is an investigation of the dangers facing teenagers who leave home for the bright lights of London. Almost like a sequel to what you've just been talking about. But because of unexpected events that occurred during the shooting, it became a 2-part documentary. One about a hardened girl living homeless, as it were, and a 12-year-old Scottish boy arriving into Euston. But then part 2, which was events that they couldn't have expected, involves the murder of a young lad in a hostel and the investigation that goes on and the evil that lies behind just a thin veil of respectability of the hostel owner. I want to see this like nothing else at the moment. So tell us, why did Johnny Go Home have such an impact and become so memorable for you?
I have to admit, I don't know if I ever saw the sequel because I was working as an actor. In those days, documentaries went out once and that was it.
Yeah.
So if you didn't see, and there was no way of recording it. And so ITV was 13 different regional companies, and there were 5 regional that ruled it. One was Granada over in Lancashire, as it was then, Yorkshire Television, which was Yorkshire and Lincolnshire and parts of Nottinghamshire. And then there was Central, which was the Midlands. And then the other 2 were London Weekend and Thames Television. And they sort of divided it up. It's a bit like the mafia, the sort of these kind of 5 families that controlled everything. And Yorkshire Television got to do a lot of the feature-length documentaries.
Yeah.
And because I'm from Yorkshire, you know, you become very proud of what your local television station does and you watch everything. And it was just extraordinary because, so obviously I was by then living in London. And it's just this young lad who you see getting off the train at Euston. And then he's, as they film them, there's this very religious, kind man who takes him under his wing. And you follow it, and you begin to learn that a lot of these boys that come down at a young age are pimping out their bodies as prostitutes in order to live and get by. And this nice, kindly sort of vicary person turns out to be running a sinister kind of sex ring, not unlike Jeffrey Epstein. And it's just the way the whole thing unfolds. And within the innocent filming they're doing, if you could call it innocent, they begin to realize they have footage that can lead to conviction of somebody who carried out murder. But it was just the shockingness. I mean, at the time, I knew about it. I knew about child prostitution. When I was an actor, I was always getting men trying to come up to me in London, and I originally thought they wanted me to do burglaries because I was small. And somebody took me to one side and said, I was only 14. And they said, David, no, it's not burglaries they want from you. So there was this undercurrent in London at the time, a kind of Fagin, and this was what this man is. He's very like Fagin, but there was a lot of and people never talked about it. People didn't talk about children being sexually abused. It just didn't happen. This is, to my knowledge, was the first time it ever came up. So it just became something that and I've never seen it since. So we're talking about 50 years ago. But it just had this profound effect on me. And I always thought that one day I'd like to make documentaries because I saw that you had this... the way that you could create what it is you're making in the moment as you're going along, because I was disciplined by having, you know, worked in drama where it's a script and you stick to the script and you don't change the script. And so that put me on the road to it. And you know, ITV, on the other side, Granada were doing extraordinary documentaries, and a series that stayed with me forever is the Up series that Michael Apted did. And because I'm the same age as all those people. But of all the single dramas, people say to me as a documentary director, they say, what are your favourite films? And I say, define a film. And they say, well, something like yours that go into the cinema. And I said, well, my favourite one of all is one made for television. And people get very funny about it. I remember talking to someone at the Sight and Sound. He was very sniffy about it. And I said, look, there were no feature-length documentaries, really. So
finish your thought.
But so that was the one for me. So I would love to see it again. Whether I will or not is another matter.
Indeed. No, I think that you've created a mystery for us both there with that one. Out of interest, though, was given the subject matter of what became The Shocking Part 2, this investigation into a murder that they'd kind of accidentally stumbled upon in their filming, did that cause any tabloid furore or anything? Do you remember?
Oh, it did. I mean, yes. I mean, Johnny Go Home did in itself.
Yeah.
I mean, it was something that everybody talked about because in those days there were only 3 channels.
Yeah.
So if something made an impact, it's like, you know, most of everybody you knew had already seen it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, look, for your final choice, I'm going to name a film, but I'm going to also name a few other films that you gave me. So we're going to start with 1976's Assault on Precinct 13, written and directed by John Carpenter, which is a modern-day urban take on the Western, set in a defunct Los Angeles police precinct office when held hostage by a bloodthirsty gang. But I could easily have mentioned Withal I, Bladerunner, and/or Shawshank Redemption, because David tells me he loves a film that flops and then has a hugely successful afterlife. So tell me, what is it that fascinates you about this journey for a film?
Well, it's the fact that I saw all 4 films when they first came out in the cinema.
Yeah.
And they was perceived to be, they were a flop. There was no one else in the cinema. When I saw Withal I one evening, there were either 3 or 4 of us in the cinema. Just nobody went to see it. And that resonated with me because I was an actor. And for most people's films who flop, and I've distributed an awful lot that have flopped, that are very, very good films. And it's nothing to do with the film. It's to do with the timing. And I just think that all filmmakers, need to be aware that the reason your film hasn't worked, and I can say this having been a distributor, is so many times, it's not to do with you. What else is coming out that week? Is it sunny outside? You'll be amazed how many films fail because it's an Indian summer and people just don't go to the cinema in this country. And I particularly chose all those 4 because they've all become important cult films. And I think for all of us filmmakers, one of them at least is very fond and something that we often refer to. There are lots of others that do sort of have another life, Rocky Horror Picture Show, but that was always successful. I remember with Assault on Precinct 13 going, oh my goodness, this is extraordinary. I wanted to do something very like that. And it did flop. It was taken on bizarrely by the London Film Festival. And then a friend of mine's father picked it up for distribution and didn't do that well with it. But John Carpenter was so impressed with him. He said, I'm writing another film I'm going to be making called Halloween. And would you mind if I named one of the characters after you? And my friend's father said, no, by all means do. So he took that distributor's name, Michael Myers.
No way!
Yeah, and called his
the icon of slasher films, Mike Myers. Michael Myers, yeah.
But of all the films, I think Withal I was the one, not Withal I, which I do like, but it was Shawshank, because how that became a very successful film is just happenstance in a way. And people will say other things, but because I'm a distributor, I'm in the business, I know this.
So tell us.
It is a remarkably good film. And what happened, it became the very first film that went on sale, I think it was 1997, because I was in Ireland at the time, on VHS, and it sold for £4.99. Now, this was a time when videos were costing like 30 quid, and they were mostly through rental stores. And it wasn't cost effective to release them at a low price. And they just experimented. It was a very brave thing to do. And because it was $4.99, people kind of vaguely knew Tim Robbins, and Morgan Freeman they weren't sure about, because they could see the cover. And they'd go, but it's only $4.99, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
And it just became this thing that people absolutely loved it. And they would tell other people. And it just became this huge success, selling bonkers numbers. I can't remember what it was, but that changed the whole video market, and it really introduced what became the sell-through market. But had it not been for some distributor going, I'm going to try this out, then it probably would have just disappeared.
I mean, the whole noughties model with the DVD was the £7 by the till at Asda, wasn't it? That kind of idea of it's a film for £7. As you were going out by the till in Asda. You weren't going for a film, but you're like, oh, I'll throw that in.
Yes.
There goes our bell, sir. There goes our bell. So brings us to the end of 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. I weirdly, when I was writing my notes, I hadn't made until we started talking about it. I hadn't made the link between Billy Liar and Johnny Go Home. One's.
I have to say this. Until you mentioned it, I hadn't. It's extraordinary. This subconscious kind of
because one's you imagining if I never left, and one's the nightmare of what happened if I'd got caught up into. You can read it 2 ways, can't you? It's kind of quite remarkable. Well, let's remind people then what's happening with the cinema release for The Marbles.
So, like all my films, it will come out rolled out over. I just do 1, 2, 3 day bookings, and I try to go and do as many Q&As as possible. And it's one of those I hope will get traction and it will have a long life in the cinema. My other films seem to have sort of lasted for 6-7 months. But that's the beauty of digital. So I'm never a fan of film. I worked with film. But digital means you can now have 1 day bookings. So cinemas will take much more of a chance. People think that cinemas are against filmmakers. They're not. They have very large rents to pay. The cost of heating now is astronomical. There's the VAT and everything. But when you can offer it digitally and you say, I just want a 1 day booking, they'll take a chance. I mean, they're very good in this country on doing that. So it will all be down to what the reviews are like and what the initial week or two's box office is like. That's, at the end of the day, it's all about bums on seats.
Indeed. Well, look,
sadly.
Well, best of luck with the world premiere, which obviously we speak before that happens. So in the future, when this is live, it'll all gone well, is what I'm going to predict. And it just gives me to say thank you very much for giving your time on the podcast.
Thank you.
Do remember to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, follow on Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more movies that impacted your life. And if you want to, I'd love to know what your favourite movies are, what your fondest movie memories are. So please share your favourite movies that impacted your life on Twitter. Look for @LeightonRocks, and you can always leave me a review, 5-star preferably, and in your review tell us which 3 films impacted your life. Best ones get read out on the podcast.
Hello travellers, do you enjoy dark fantasy? Fancy some duets? Or maybe you're just in search of a long-form D&D campaign. Something to drown in when you're bored. Aimer Ace and Niles Wilhelm here on behalf of the Wayward Inquisition to let you know that they are your destination. Filled to the brim with all the glorious stories that you've been looking for, the Wayward Inquisition brings content that will have you wondering just what sorcery do these jesters possess. Give them a try. It's no skin off your bone. Unless Tyrell's involved, then it might be, but either way, go give them a listen. I promise you won't regret it.